I tell my wife and my kids that I have a lot of inboxes. Like whenever you have a birthday today, you get LinkedIn and you get emails and WhatsApps and all these things, right? For information is the same. We have a lot of inboxes for information. What do you recommend a business leader to really understand what's going on around the world, be able to see all points of view politically and the rest, and be able to take decisions with real data and be able to see both sides? What do you recommend a business leader to do?
I can only speak maybe, for example, here in Mexico or Latin America, like what's an important way of getting a sense of what's going on in the business environment. As I mentioned before, industry events are very important thermometers of what's happening in different sectors. So for example, here in Mexico, there's different events for the chemical industry, for the mining industry, for the automotive industry. Like these are quite important events to be present in, to get a sense of what's going on in each one. And also looking for international standards. Like a lot of companies that we speak to that are having a lot of success here in Mexico is they say a lot that maybe the regulation or what is required of a company here in Mexico does not compare to what's going on in other markets. So maybe, taking it into your own hands and bringing in international standards yourself that maybe aren't required of you legally, but it's a way of creating more productive operations and making your business model more attractive for international investors. So keeping an eye out on what's happening internationally is also very important step in making sure you have a very holistic perspective of what's going on in the industry and not only focusing locally.
All right, let me go now a little bit the last minutes of the podcast, kind of an internal. We talk about business year as a business. Now let's talk about growth and like you're a woman that you're heading an international organization in Mexico. First of all, congrats. And how do you what was your career development to get there, and what do you have to learn to be a leader of international organization?
At first it was very difficult. Like the first 2 years that I started working, in the business intelligence world, because a lot of the times when I would go to interviews with the companies, me or whoever was in my team would be the only woman in the room. So that also pushes you. You kind of have to know a lot. Like you can't really risk the chance of them thinking you don't know what you're talking about. You have to be very prepared. You have to be one step ahead. Maybe know a little bit more than the other people that are in the meeting. So it really does push you to be very prepared. Something that makes me a little bit happier now is that it's a bit easier to be a woman. I mean, it's still not easy, but it's less difficult than before. Now there's more associations, there's more visibility on what's happening. And they're also trying to give more visibility to female leaders in different markets, I think, around the world. So that's something that's making it a little bit less challenging. And also being able to go to business meetings or events and having women associations there, like women present, like that's making it a little bit easier to be a woman in leadership.
Yeah, that's getting to be very common and all through Latin America. We've seen women rise all over every industry, company, government to great levels. So, and I think that's great. I think that's part of the evolution of the region, and we're seeing it, of course, in Latin America. Congrats.
So and this topic is just one more thing.
Please.
This topic is also getting deeper, because before it would be enough for a company to paint its office pink, for the month of March, and say we thank all of our beautiful women, but that's not enough, And I actually like that a lot of female leaders are also questioning more companies, and we're talking more about policies, like how companies can create better policies, or how as a woman you shouldn't have to choose whether you want to be a mom or a CEO. Like what can we do to create better standards and policies so that women are allowed to follow both paths?
100%. So let's talk about how do you grow your team. We know that the only way to grow a company is by growing your team. Like how do you learn? How do you help your team learn and continue to evolve and go to the next level?
And this is actually a very important topic as well that we're discussing internally and also with the companies that we're speaking to, that there is a big shortage of quality labor. So here in the business year, we really work on internally developing the people that we have in our teams, like making sure they're prepared, working a lot on internal training. We also give a lot of opportunities to travel around the world, which can be very attractive to the younger generation. So that's something and fast levels of growth. But this is a topic that we're talking a lot with different companies as well, that they're quite concerned about the way maybe the Generation Z can sometimes disappear and quit. So definitely keeping your team happy is a very big priority all over the market.
And how do you learn? What's your way of learning, and how do you keep yourself up to date? I mean, leadership and management styles and all that.
Actually a long time ago, well, like maybe like 3 years ago, Daniel, I took your scaling up program and I actually implemented some of the things. I actually implemented some of the things from the program. For example, like we're having very clear and visible KPIs. Like we did have, for example, online, we had like a way to measure our that we're hitting our goals and stuff, but it was very simple. I just bought like a big whiteboard, like I have it written down visibly, and just something as simple as that really motivates the team as well. So there's really simple solutions as well to keep your team happy. It doesn't have to be like a crazy software or something. Sometimes the simplest way of like having people visibly see their advancements can also keep a team motivated, and especially in a long project of ours, like it's a whole year, a year of effort, that we have to do.
And what do you prefer for format of learning? Live courses, online books? What's your way of learning?
I like a mix, for example, because sometimes, especially now that the pandemic is over, like we all were quite deep into the Zooms. Like I try to avoid or keep the Zooms to a minimum now, since we had like 2 or 3 years of that. So I also like to talk like physically in events, or as I mentioned, like going to in-person events is a really good way of getting absorbed in the information. Because sometimes by Zoom, like you're still getting emailed or getting talked to by your supervisor or whatever. So sometimes going into an in-person event is a really good way of getting absorbed in that information, but that's not always possible. So I also like to blend it with maybe like podcasts or, and digital courses as well, like a good blend of that.
Very cool. So if you had just one lesson to share with a business leader, or even better, a businesswoman, what would that be?
To businesswoman. Well, something we discuss a lot, like when I interview other female leaders, is the how important it is for women to say yes to opportunities. So, for example, some companies tell us that they have difficulty finding a female CEO, that they can't find, a woman that wants to take on like these kind of leadership positions. So sometimes just saying yes, or also maybe if the role isn't adapted to your needs, like not being scared to question the systems and policies that are put in place, and getting to these dialogues. How can if there's not enough females or women saying yes to these kind of positions, like what can we change as a company to change the responsibilities of the role?
All right. Hey, I had really a pleasure. You and I communicate on emails and course and all that, but we've never had a conversation. It was great to spend some time with you and be able to meet you and learn from you and bring the right data about Mexico. It's so important to the world. It's so important for nearshoring, so important for the big corporations to really take decisions. It's great what you guys are doing in Mexico, and of course all over the world, 36 markets. But being Mexican and doing business in the US, I get that complaint all the time. We don't have data, and the data that we are getting, it's something we don't trust. So getting the right data and some data we can trust is very important.
Exactly, Daniel. No, and thank you very much for having me in your podcast. It's an absolute honor to be able to be here and speak with you. And it's always a pleasure for me to be able to promote Mexico and Latin America as places to do business. We work very hard in breaking myths and stereotypes that revolve around these markets by getting firsthand insights from CEOs that are doing business in there. And, if you're an investor or a company that maybe wants to enter these markets, you can take a look at the business year to see what people that are doing business in these markets have to say about the challenges and opportunities.
That's awesome. Hey, Alejandra, if someone wants to follow you or learn more from you, what networks can they follow you?
So feel free to look for me in LinkedIn, and Alejandra Gómez Arriola is my full name on LinkedIn, and you can see kind of the things that we're doing here in Mexico, and to see more about the business here and what we're doing in other markets around the world. You can find us on LinkedIn and Twitter, which is where we're most active.
Super. All right. Alejandra, thank you very much. Great pleasure. And thanks for providing good data about Mexico to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure to have a chat with you.